Nike just did something they've never done to a two-time US Open champion. They demanded their money back, and they tore up his endorsement contract on the spot. That player is Wyndham Clark, and if you're a real golf fan, you already know the name. You know the US Open wins. You know the talent. But what you might not know is how one of the most promising careers in modern golf just hit a wall so hard that the biggest sports brand on the planet decided to walk away. And not quietly. This isn't a contract expiring. This isn't a mutual split. This is Nike officially saying, we want a refund. In the world of athlete endorsements, that's almost unheard of. It means they believe Clark broke something fundamental. It means they're willing to burn a bridge publicly to make a point. And here's the part that should make every golf fan pause. This didn't come out of nowhere. Over the past 18 months, Clark's image has shifted from next big thing to most controversial figure on tour. You've probably seen the headlines. The Oakmont meltdown, the club smashing, the rule disputes, the fans at Shinnecock Hills actually cheering his mistakes. That's not normal. That's not a rough patch. That's a pattern. So the question isn't just what did Clark do? The real question is, what made Nike finally pull the trigger? And more importantly, what does this say about the state of the PGA Tour when one of its major winners becomes so toxic that a global brand demands a refund? We're going to break it all down. The events, the contract clauses, the fallout, and what it means for Clark's future. But first, I want your take. Do you think Nike overreacted, or was this the only move they had left? Drop your opinion in the comments. I genuinely want to know which side you're on. And if you want to stay ahead of every twist in this story, hit that subscribe button, because this is only the beginning, and trust me, the full picture is far more shocking than the headline. And that's the part that should make you stop and think. Because here's the thing about Wyndham Clark. This isn't some journeyman player fighting for his card. This is a guy who stood toe-to-toe with Rory McIlroy and won. This is a US Open champion, twice. A player who, just a couple of years ago, looked like he was going to be the next big name in American golf. So how does someone with that resume end up here? You have to look at the timeline. And honestly, it's been a brutal 18 months. After that 2023 US Open win at LAC, everything seemed possible. He backed it up with the Pebble Beach win. World ranking climbed into the top 10. Sponsors were lining up. Nike was already on board. The future looked golden. Then something shifted. It started small. A few controversial comments. Then it got bigger. Rules disputes that made him look difficult. An incident at the PGA Championship where he smashed his driver so hard it snapped. Cameras caught it. Social media ate it up. And the narrative started to turn. The guy who was supposed to be the next American star started looking like someone who couldn't keep his emotions in check. But the real breaking point, the moment everything changed, happened at last year's US Open at Oakmont. If you remember what happened there, you already know why this story matters. If you don't, I'll take you there in a moment. Because that weekend didn't just cost Clark a major championship. It cost him something far more valuable. And without that understanding, none of what Nike just did makes any sense. Right now, Clark is trying to rebuild. He won the CJ Cup Byron Nelson this year, his first win since everything fell apart. It should have been a comeback story. Instead, just weeks later, Nike dropped the hammer. So what exactly did Clark do to lose a deal that most players would kill for? Let's go back to that night at Oakmont, because that's where this story truly begins. Oakmont Country Club is one of the most hallowed grounds in American golf. It's hosted more US Opens than almost any other course. The membership there takes pride in their history. They don't tolerate disrespect. And when Wyndham Clark walked off that course after missing the cut, he left behind something that would haunt him forever. He didn't just lose his composure. He destroyed property inside the clubhouse. The reports say he smashed a locker, maybe more than one. There was damage that needed to be paid for. Oakmont's president, John Lynch, didn't handle it quietly. He sent a letter to members, and that letter made it very clear. Clark was banned from the property. Not suspended, not warned, banned. The conditions for him to ever return were steep: full restitution for the damage, a meaningful donation to a charity chosen by the club, and most telling of all, successful completion of anger management and psychological counseling. That's not a slap on the wrist. That's a statement that the club considered his behavior dangerous enough that he needed professional help before he could set foot there again. Think about that for a second. A two-time U.S. Open champion, banned from one of the most famous golf courses in the country. Not for cheating, not for drugs, for losing his temper so badly that the club decided he was a liability. That night cost him more than just a weekend at Oakmont. It cost him the trust of every sponsor watching from the sidelines. And it gets worse, because Clark didn't learn from that moment. At least not immediately. The very next major, the PGA Championship, cameras caught him snapping his driver in frustration. Not a gentle tap, a full-force smash across his bag. The club broke. The footage went viral. Golf fans who had never heard of Wyndham Clark suddenly knew him as the guy who can't control himself. Then there were the comments, some of them controversial. He joked about birth control in a way that didn't land well. He criticized the Hero World Challenge for not having enough star power, which felt ironic considering he was struggling to keep his own star from fading. He got into disputes with rules officials. He complained about course conditions. He complained about spectators. And the spectators started to notice. By the time the 2026 U.S. Open rolled around at Shinnecock Hills, something had shifted permanently. Clark was playing well. He was actually in contention, but instead of cheering him on, the New York crowd turned hostile. They booed him. They cheered his bad shots. They applauded when he made mistakes. Think about that. A major championship, thousands of people, and they're actively rooting against one of the players. That almost never happens. Jordan Spieth actually addressed it publicly. He suggested sports betting might be part of the problem. Fans placing bets on Clark to lose and then getting aggressive when he performed well. But betting wasn't the whole story. The crowd at Shinnecock wasn't just gambling. They were reacting to everything they'd seen over the last 18 months. They had formed an opinion about Wyndham Clark, and that opinion wasn't flattering. He was supposed to be the next American golf star. Instead, he became the player everyone loved to hate. Now fast forward to this year, Clark finally starts to turn things around. The CJ Cup Byron Nelson, his first win since the Pebble Beach victory. The momentum felt real. The interviews sounded more humble. He started talking about wanting to win back fans. He admitted the Oakmont situation was a low point. He said he was in a dark place. For a moment, it looked like the comeback was on. And then Nike decided they'd seen enough. Let's talk about what Nike's decision actually means, because this is where the real story lives. Endorsement contracts in professional sports are complex. They're not just wear our shoes and we pay you. They have clauses, lots of them. Behavior clauses, image clauses, morality clauses. Nike's contracts are famously strict. They expect their athletes to represent the brand in a positive way. They don't want controversy. They don't want headlines about anger issues or property destruction. They want clean, marketable, reliable ambassadors. Clark's behavior over the past 18 months, the club smashing, the Oakmont ban, the confrontations with officials, the public disputes, all of it violated that image. Nike didn't just decide to let his contract expire quietly. They made a public statement. They demanded a refund. That means they're invoking clauses in the contract that allow them to recoup money already paid. In plain terms, they're saying Clark breached his agreement. They're saying he failed to uphold his end of the deal, and they want their investment back. This is almost unheard of in golf. Tiger Woods left Nike on his own terms. Rory McIlroy left Nike and nobody asked for a refund. Even players who lost sponsorships typically just saw the contract run out. Nike didn't wait. They terminated it mid-term, and they made sure everyone knew they were doing it. That's the difference between a business decision and a warning shot. But here's the part that should worry every golf fan. Clark's situation isn't isolated. The pressure he's been under, the constant travel, the packed schedule, the signature events, the majors, the qualifying requirements, it's affecting more players than just him. And Nike's decision to walk away isn't just about Clark. It's about the kind of player the PGA Tour is producing right now. One player's meltdown can be dismissed as an anomaly. But when the system keeps creating the same pressures, it stops being just about one guy. Let me show you what I mean. Just a few weeks ago, the Charles Schwab Challenge at Colonial lost Brooks Koepka, Scottie Scheffler, Jordan Spieth, and Wyndham Clark. 4 huge names, gone from one of the most historic tournaments on the schedule. Fans were furious. People bought tickets expecting to see stars. They got alternates instead. The reason? Scheduling pressure. Players are exhausted. They're forced to choose between traditional events and signature events. They're grinding through 7 straight tournament weeks, They're burning out, and when players burn out, they snap. Clark didn't snap at Colonial, he snapped at Oakmont. He snapped at the PGA Championship, and the more he snapped, the more the golf world turned against him. It's a vicious cycle. Stress breeds mistakes. Mistakes breed criticism. Criticism breeds more stress. And at some point, the brand that pays you decides you're not worth the headache anymore. Nike made that decision for Clark, and they made it loudly. Now here's the real question nobody's fully answered yet. Is Wyndham Clark a problem player who finally faced consequences? Or is he a symptom of a broken system that pushes players past their limits and then punishes them when they break? Think about everything we've covered. The 18 months of steady decline, the Oakmont meltdown, the club smashing, the angry crowds, and through it all, Clark kept playing, kept grinding, kept trying to prove he was still the guy who beat Rory at Lac. But the pressure never let up. The travel never stopped. The demands from sponsors, from the tour, from the media, they all kept coming. It's not an excuse. Clark made his choices. He broke things. He said things. He earned the reputation he has. But the environment that allowed that reputation to grow, that's bigger than one player. And now Nike has drawn a line. They've said, in effect, that this kind of behavior won't be tolerated. They're not just ending a contract, they're making an example. Clark's reaction has been interesting. He hasn't fought back publicly. He's spoken about wanting to repair his image. He's talked about getting help. He's acknowledged that the Oakmont situation was a dark place and that he was barely leaving his house. That doesn't sound like someone who doesn't care. That sounds like someone who knows he messed up and is trying to fix it. But with Nike, it's too late. The refund demand is final. The termination is final. Whatever relationship Clark had with the brand is over, and he's left to wonder what comes next. Can he rebuild without a major sponsor? That's the million-dollar question. There are other brands out there. Callaway still has him. Rolex too. But losing Nike is different. Nike is the biggest. They set the standard. When they cut you loose, other companies pay attention. They wonder if you're worth the risk. And in an era where brands are more cautious than ever, being dropped by Nike is a red flag that's hard to ignore. Clark's golf game hasn't abandoned him. The CJ Cup win proved that. But the game has never been the only thing that matters. Image matters. Reputation matters. How you carry yourself matters. And for 18 months, Clark carried himself like someone who couldn't handle the weight. We've seen players come back from worse. Tiger Woods came back from personal scandal. Dustin Johnson came back from suspension. Phil Mickelson survived the gambling controversy. But all of them had something Clark doesn't right now. A reservoir of goodwill from fans and sponsors that gave them room to recover. Clark burned through that goodwill, and Nike just confirmed that he hasn't earned it back yet. So where does this leave us? What happens next? Clark will keep playing. He'll keep competing. He'll probably win again. The talent hasn't vanished, but the trust has. And trust in professional sports, especially golf, takes years to rebuild. Nike will move on. They always do. They'll find another young star to put their logo on. Someone clean, someone safe, someone who won't smash lockers at Oakmont or snap drivers on national television. The brand is bigger than any one player. And the PGA Tour? They'll keep pushing. Keep adding signature events. Keep asking players to play more, travel more, perform more. Because the machine doesn't stop. It just keeps going, grinding up whoever gets in its way. But as a fan, you have to wonder, how many more Wyndham Clarks will there be? How many more players will break under the pressure before the system changes? Or will they just keep getting replaced like Clark was replaced at Colonial, by alternates who are just happy to have a chance? That's the real crisis the PGA Tour is facing. Not one player's meltdown, not one brand's decision. The slow erosion of the humanity in the game, the relentless schedule, the impossible expectations, the sponsors watching every move, ready to cut you loose the moment you stop being useful. Wyndham Clark learned that lesson the hard way, and Nike made sure everyone else learned it too. Now it's your turn to weigh in. Do you think Nike was right to demand a refund? Or is this an overreaction to a guy who just had a few bad moments? I'm genuinely curious what you think. Drop your take in the comments. Let's see where the golf world really stands. And if you want to stay on top of every twist in this story, hit that subscribe button. There's more happening behind the scenes than you realize. Clark isn't done yet. Neither is Nike. And the PGA Tour? They're just getting started with the chaos. We'll be right here covering it all. So stick around, because the next chapter of this story might be the most shocking one yet.